Welcome to the TIMFD podcast. Today is my favorite day is about appreciating every day as it comes, no matter what life throws at us. We hope this podcast speaks to you, and if it does, please like, share, and comment. Now let's find out why today is our favorite day this week.
Welcome back to Today is My Favorite Day. I'm Sam McKeown here with David Towner and Matt Dallara,
There's a
and
joke
we will come
that.
to that,
Yes.
and we'll get to that conversation. But David, you have a question for Matt today.
Yeah, and just generally, how do you deal with the stress and PTSD in a military setting? So first of all, tell us about your military background, because we have a lot of military around here, because we have MacDill here.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
All right, so I joined the military when I was 18, right out of high school.
And you did that why? You wanted to get out of the house, didn't you?
Yes, there was lots of toxic things, which I didn't really understand was super toxic until later on in life.
Of course.
But a big part of it was my beautiful bride, either join the military or I'm leaving you, sort of deal.
Oh, there we go.
So,
high five, good job.
I made the right decision.
Bam.
So I joined when I was 18. I went straight into munitions. I built bombs and missiles for 9 years. Okay. Then in 2009, I transferred over to law enforcement side. Okay. And I'm still doing that today.
Yeah, and you're doing what today? What do you do specifically with that?
So today I fill kind of a counterintelligence type role. I used to do criminal investigations, see a lot of crazy stuff. And then I transferred, kind of moved over to more of the counterintelligence stuff. Okay.
So there's we wanted to kind of get your military background so those who are in the military understand where he's coming from. And I know that you and I had talked about a couple of things. We've been dealing with stress. Yeah. So we've had a chiropractor in. We've had a couple of personal trainers in. We've had business owners come in that deal with nutrition, that kind of thing. So now we're bringing you in specifically because of what we've seen in this area, which is a lot of military people that are struggling. And a lot of them, it's dealing with the PTSD that deals with that. So you've seen junk.
Yes.
Okay. So did you see it more in the military? I mean, the if you want to call it the police side of things, is that where you saw the worst of it?
Yeah. The first 9 years, I think I was really too naive to realize the kind of stressful situations I was in. Okay. Besides the family moving around.
Yes. And that's a big stress.
It is. It's huge.
Now, where have you guys, just think about that. Where have you moved?
So right out of high school, obviously I joined, I think before I was 19, right when I turned 19, straight to England.
Oh, wow. England. What part of England?
Lakenheath. It's about an hour from Cambridge.
Okay. Yeah. I studied in Oxford and I got to go up to Cambridge. So I get that.
Not too far.
Yeah. Cool.
But when you're a teenager with a very young daughter and a new wife and you get shipped overseas halfway around the world, you can imagine the types of stressors that will give you. Right. So the family,
stress alone.
The family aspect of that was more at the forefront than the military stress aspect.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think I really dealt with too much. I mean, I deployed a couple times during that, but it was, again, I was so young. I was just like, this is what I'm supposed to do, whatever, because there's obviously there's a spectrum of stress, right? Good stress, bad stress.
Yeah, of course.
Military trains you to handle, I guess,
as much stress as you can.
As you can, turn what could be bad into the good stress. Yes. That's what the training's for. Yes. So, and I think that really helped out once I got to the law enforcement side and deployed with that.
So in the law enforcement, you were deployed where?
I only did one deployment to Afghanistan while I was active duty. And a good example of like the good stress that will help you out in a situation like that is one point in my pre-deployment training, we go through live fire exercises, and one is called malfunction junction. Okay. So you stand there in a big group of people, and you're not looking downrange, and when they call your name, you run to the firing line, and there's a whole line of rifles, and each one has a different malfunction. And you got to start on one end and work your way all the way through. Cool. And you have to shoot around before you can move on. While you're doing this, all the instructors are running into you, hitting you, yelling at you, getting in your face, because they need you to be able to put a round downrange in a stressful situation. Okay. That's good stress.
Yes, it is.
Because when you get there and you have to do that for real, your training kicks in.
Yeah, it's kind of like an athlete pushing their body to the limit, so when they do actually get in the event, they can go without even thinking about it.
Exactly. Yeah, so if you don't, I didn't really understand that when I was going through pre-deployment training. Mm-hmm. If you know why you're doing some kind of training, why you're doing some kind of repetition of an activity to deal with the real world part of it, it kind of flips a little switch in your brain to where you're like, oh, the stress is not It's not like, oh, this sucks. This is going to be terrible.
Right.
It's like, no, this is going to keep me alive, somebody else alive.
Yeah.
Something like
absolutely.
that. Right.
So you dealt with that, and you went to Afghanistan?
Yes.
Okay. And what part of Afghanistan?
Kabul. I was in Kabul.
Okay. Yeah. And what did you do there? I mean, you said you were policing, so.
Yeah. So for my job, once we get over there, it's a little different. Our team is 3 people, usually. It's me, my partner, and our interpreter, or linguist, as I like to be called. Sorry.
Okay.
We go outside the wire every single day. I was gone for 189 days, and 180 of those I was out driving around. It's funny. I used to think that I was just lazy and didn't care for most of my adulthood. Mm-hmm. But looking back, it was, I still have a lazy streak, I'm sure, but if you ask my wife, but I realized that it was more leaning on that training and leaning on faith as I got about halfway through my career is when I started following Christ.
Okay.
But leaning more on that was, I was just like, well, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Like, God's got it, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I would do some pretty crazy things in Afghanistan that after I came back, I told her, like, she didn't want to know anything while I was there, of course, because she's dealing with her own stressors,
But when you came back, you kind of explained some stuff?
I told her some stuff, and sometimes when I would start getting into a story, she's like, do I want to hear the end? I'm like, probably not. We'll just, I'm here. And nothing bad happened, a sort of deal. But yeah, there was times where I would be walking around in the middle of Kabul, Afghanistan with no weapons, no nothing, because I'm trying to find places where I can meet certain people that are concealed, all that kind of good stuff. And then looking back, I'm like, probably shouldn't have done that. But if something was going to happen, it was going to happen, because people were getting blown up all the time where we were at. They were getting shot. Like, things were happening.
And were you dealing with those? Like, if someone got, I'm trying to, because I don't understand the military policing side of it. You're policing our people who are doing things wrong underneath military law. Is that how it works? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure that out.
Not there.
Not there.
There was all counterterrorism stuff.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're counterterrorism.
Yeah,
okay.
So out there, my job was insider threat. Okay. So I had to look at the people, because every time I go overseas in the military, they hire local nationals.
Right.
Obviously, why wouldn't you?
And so you're checking them out.
Yeah, we're checking them out, and a lot of times, there was a lot of things that happened while I was there, and right before I was there, a lot of people died because they weren't doing that part of the job.
So what was the, if you can explain, because I know some guys in their particular thing, they can't talk about certain stuff, but what was the highest stress situation you were in that you went, well, I'm feeling this?
Yeah, so I remember one story. I speak about this one a lot, because it was, people would tell stories about, the hair on the back of my neck, and I'm like, what does that mean? Yeah. Well, that happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was that?
So we were driving around, I can't remember, coming back from a mission, and we're in Kabul. The traffic is it makes Tampa look like a breeze.
Really?
Oh yeah, I'll have some videos I'll bring in.
Yeah, bring them in. That'd be hilarious. Yeah.
But we were driving, and all the cars are stopped. Never happens unless there's like a big traffic jam, but there's room, and everybody's just stopped. So we get to a roundabout, and we're just looking around, and it's loud. Kabul is a loud city. Okay. And we're like, okay, so what are we doing? We have to figure out what's going on. Our linguist says, hey, I'm going to get out and talk to the cop. We're like, okay. So when you stop and somebody breaks a seal, somebody gets out, like, we have to do our perimeter. So we all get out, we all have our rifles, and we're just looking around, and it is quiet.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, so I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. And I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. So I'm looking around, and I'm like, so he comes running back, and he's like, they're tracking 4 vehicles with guys with suicide vests looking for American convoys, American vehicles.
Just to blow up everybody.
Oh boy.
And I was like, we should probably go.
Yeah. Time to leave.
Yeah. So that was a little stressful, because at that point we kind of got complacent, because nothing happened to us for 4 or 5 months, us specifically, because we're driving around every day, nothing happened. So we're like, whatever. And then towards the end, this happens, and I'm instantly like, ooh, like all that stress, all that training, everything that they say bad could happen runs through your head. And then, your heart rate goes up, everything goes up. And then, it was that moment. There's other things that happened that were pretty significant too, but that moment alone was. So how did you deal with the stress of that once it was over?
Your coping mechanism.
Yeah, so I hit kind of a dark spot while I was there. I'm not going to get into it right now, but that stress hit me, and there was a point where my brain was like, we need to just take care of this, and it was like, it was briefly, it happened quick, and I was like, it went away quick, and I was like, ooh, that was bad.
Emotionally, mentally,
everything.
Body,
everything. I was missing my family. I was at war. Like people I knew a week before are now dead. It's just like what is going on? So that
whole kind of whole body.
You know what I did? I went to the chapel.
Oh, did
Started
you?
going to church.
There you go.
I was like, all right, so we're going to go to church in Afghanistan on base. And the very first song they sang was Revelation Song, which is one of my wife's favorites. Yep. And I lost it.
Oh, no way.
Just completely lost it.
That's
first
cool.
time I ever cried at church. First time I ever cried during a worship song. I was like, what's coming out of my eyes? Like, what is happening? So at that point, and I met this wonderful man named Mike Munson. And Mike, if you ever listen to this, thank you so much.
This was in Afghanistan?
Is in Afghanistan. He was another special agent like me, and he was a Christian.
Okay.
You don't meet a lot of real open Christians, you know? And he kind of pushed me in a direction and kind of mentored me a little bit. And he's the one who got me saying boogers because you say the F word like nobody's business. So now I say boogers.
So he worked with the boogers instead.
Yeah. So, which is good.
The F word, forgiveness, right?
Forgiveness. Yeah, that's what I was talking about for sure. And then we got other people going, and then the whole stress, the bad stress turned into the good stress. Like, all right, now we're going to go outside. Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to look for? And it kind of calmed me down a little bit.
So the typical thing with everybody has a coping mechanism. And what one of the biggest coping mechanisms I at least I hear from military people is drinking, correct?
Oh yeah.
Just you try to drink that kind of stuff away.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Usually one of two things. That I fell in that same boat. I was a heavy drinker for years and years, and really until quite recently, actually.
Well, and your family is a drinking family, correct?
Yeah,
so you already had that going on as a kid.
Yeah. First time I ever got stoned or took a drink of alcohol was with my mom when I was 14.
There we go.
So
that's the culture.
That's
the culture.
Yeah. Military, culture, cops, culture, you know, so.
And that's the other thing you wanted to bring up is that we're talking about first responder kind of type people, and they have the same issue in Tampa, right? The police officers, these kind of guys have a lot of the same issues, and a lot of them are coming from the military.
Yeah.
And the
military doesn't give you the tools that you need to cope with this stuff. That's why, 22 a day. I'm sure you guys have heard the term 22 veterans commit suicide every single day. It's actually twice that.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's in the 40s.
Wow.
And they don't give you those tools. And when somebody like me, who's young enough to go into law enforcement after a 20-year career in the military, they bring that darkness with them.
Yes, they do.
They bring that stress with them. Everything that they saw. I saw some really crazy stuff when I was on the criminal side of things, like stuff people should never see.
And it was like, what do you mean? Just explain.
Child deaths, child sex cases, suicides, murders. Like,
so how do you deal with that getting in your head like that? Because it's going to get in your head.
Yeah. So when you go through school for these kind of things, and the first few cases you go to, all your brain is doing is, I'm supposed to be doing this.
Okay.
This is my job.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal.
Right.
It doesn't happen until later. That's why it's post-traumatic. It's post. It's after.
Yep.
It's after the fact. It's after you see all these things. And then images will pop in your head, and at times when they shouldn't.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah, something that you've gone through that could be remotely related to a situation you're going on now will just
triggers
it. And usually the first thing that happens is anger.
Yeah, makes sense.
Somebody gets angry because they're more aware. Yeah,
hypervigilant.
Exactly.
They call it. Yeah.
So without understanding these things, without talking to somebody, especially in the military, like going to see a therapist or a counselor is not. You don't do that. This is not
the thing to do. A lot of guys just go, "I'm not doing that, man."
And they're pushing, especially in my career field, they're pushing more and more that direction because there's security clearance issues. Like you're going to see a mental health professional, you must be crazy. We can't trust you.
Right.
It's like that's not the case.
No,
like I just saw a murder case. I saw a dead body. Like I should probably talk to somebody
He should be going there, not going.
You know?
He should be doing that to get healthy. He or she should be going there to get healthy, so they could be better for the job.
Yeah.
And that's moving that direction.
Yeah, I went to therapy. Actually, it was about a year ago.
That's right.
I started.
That's right. Yeah, you and I met in the office. I remember you were talking about that. Yeah.
You guys got me onto the EMDR stuff for
Tanya was all into that.
Post-traumatic stress, and which I didn't really understand that I had.
I know.
And then I get to the therapist, and he's like, "Yeah, we need to talk about this." And I'm like, "Oh, geez, okay."
It's going counter.
But if you're not willing to go see a therapist, like you have to talk to somebody
absolutely
who's either trained in that subject matter or has gone through it and does not get stressed out over those situations anymore.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I look at is all this kind of stuff: counseling, marriage counseling, grief counseling, PTSD stuff. All it is, and because I come from an athletic background, I look at it as that's a coach, and that coach is showing me how I can do things better.
Exactly.
And if a guy and guys, if you're watching this, men that are listening to this or watching this, if you're watching it and listening to it, think of it as a coaching opportunity, an opportunity to become better at who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
And you will get better in that kind of case because you thought it was helpful for you, correct?
Yeah, it was crazy. And if you want to know if it's working, if you're married, ask your spouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
She said,
and what does Jen think about that?
100% change.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
It's funny, too, because I went for military. I went for what I saw. I went for what I saw at war.
Yeah.
No, it was way before
that. I was going to say, that's all that's childhood stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, yes. And I know with Tanya, that was definitely childhood on.
Yeah.
And having to kind of deal with all those things through it. It's pretty crazy stuff.
And it's funny because most people who can handle like law enforcement, first responder type jobs, because they're going to see crazy stuff.
Yes.
They had issues when they were kids.
Yeah, they did.
You know, they had that stress, they had that trauma, they had that abuse.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, yeah. Check.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what my wife, that's what she is. So, and came from a very abusive situation. And now she leads a Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah.
So I get that. So for you, the stress of all this, you guys came to this church, and I remember sitting in an office with you, and you were just kind of going, what do I do? And then you went to we went talk to Tanya and said, what should we do?
Yeah.
Let's go to the CR leader and find out what we're supposed to do.
He's broken. How do we fix it?
Exactly. And I was going, I'm not fixing nothing. But Tanya went, this is something I did, right? Yeah. And so you did that. But also you said you said you had been drinking, but you're not drinking now. What's going on with that? Because drinking in military is big.
It's big. It's the culture. Every time you go out in a group, it's who's drinking, how much are we drinking,
Absolutely.
And
if you're not drinking, you're not one of the group.
I sure as heck ain't going to judge them for it.
No,
like I was there,
not at all.
And I understand why, because even what people would think is the least stressful job in the military is still a stressful job in the military.
Yes, it is.
You know?
It is. Right. And by the way, scripturally, it doesn't say, I'll put it in the King James, thou shalt not drink alcohol.
Yes,
it does not say that at all.
Yeah.
It says don't get drunk, because then you're letting Satan get a hold of you.
Yeah.
Problem is, all of us have been there.
Yeah.
Right. The more I drink, the more I drink.
And I know in my younger days, it was blacking out. I was so bad at alcohol that it's blacked out.
Yeah, I've been there too in my younger times.
So I have a question for you. My time as a chaplain up in Wyoming, the Wyoming Highway Patrol had a program. They had actual chaplains on the highway patrol.
Yeah.
And so whenever there was a fatality or any type of bad accident that patrol responded to, the chaplain was called out just like that. Those patrolmen couldn't leave the hospital without talking to the chaplain. I don't know if any other police departments or anything like that did that.
That's a great question for you, though. What does the chaplain do? Because the chaplain's hearing all. The chaplain's hearing all this. What does the chaplain do to not go down a road like that too?
Yeah.
Because pastors and hear all the junk.
Who's pastoring the pastors?
Yes, we can hear all the junk. So what did you do anything or not do anything? How did you work on that?
That was tough. I had a good group of chaplains at Cheyenne Regional Medical Center at the time. And so we always got together once a week. I think it was once a week. And we would talk about the tough cases.
So you did talk about it.
And Bruce, who was the lead chaplain at the time, he knew what you were called in on.
Yeah.
Because he got all the call reports, right? And so, but you have strange things happen. And so we would talk things out like that.
Do you think that's important?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to talk about it. And the thing with the type of work that I did, you only got called out in emergencies.
Yeah, real ugly stuff.
You got called out in accidents. You got called out in heart. You got, people were close to death. Yeah. I do have a funny one for you. I came back from a Pentecostal background, right?
Yes.
And so I go in and this, first off, they were Catholic and the wrong priest came out and she was all upset and everything else. And so I sat with them and talked to them and I knew he wasn't going to make it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it was time for me to go down and check on them because they were still working on him. They were trying. She grabs a hold of me. Would you just bring him back to life? You can pray over him and bring him back to life. And I'm like, what do you say?
Only Jesus does that.
Yeah, only Jesus. That's exactly
you
what
can pray over him if he raises up. It wasn't you anyway. So.
I will pray for him. So, but yeah, I really felt like, and those highway patrolmen couldn't leave the hospital without talking.
Yeah.
They couldn't leave the hospital. And the last case that I saw like that was the girl was just getting her license, so she was 16.
Yeah.
The 14-year-old daughter died.
Yep.
The younger daughter was being life flighted to Denver. And that was right before I left to come to Wyoming. And the dad was in the car. And he's telling everybody he's okay. He's okay. Nothing happened to him. Boom, 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 boom. I finally had to go get the doctor and say, he's hit his head. You could tell.
Something was not right.
When you were, something was not right. And sure enough, he had a massive concussion. And if he'd have walked out of that hospital, he probably would have lived. Yeah. And then to deal with the trauma of the 16-year-old, and he let her drive and everything else. So
even on the other end, for you, you deal with this junk. The other end deals with the junk. Yeah. I think what we have to look at our unhealthy coping mechanisms. What are they? If it's alcohol, drugs, porn, food, whatever, and go, okay, this may comfort me for a moment, right?
Yeah. Right.
But it's not going to last. Yeah. So with you said you had stopped drinking. Yeah. Has that been helpful? Because it's still hard. You're still dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and kind of put it in perspective too, like therapy was just last year.
Yes,
right?
I know. That's
so
what I mean.
I retired in 2021.
Yep.
Still doing the same job.
Yep.
I recently quit drinking completely. Not as like, giving my chip, I'm done.
Yeah.
It was just like, okay, this is too much. I got to stop.
Yeah, that's what I did long ago.
Is it going to last forever? I don't know. Yeah. Probably not. But I really, really hope I never ever get drunk again. But that wasn't the point of it. The point of it is like the health, mental health, physical health, all these things. Right. So the unhealthy, that stuff is always going to be the first thought, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And without somebody, because God did not create us to be solitary creatures.
No. Right.
Without somebody, and I don't care who you are. If you say, because I used to be this guy, like, oh, I hate everybody. Like, I don't like people. Yeah, I'm a Christian. I don't need to go to the church. The church is, where God is. Come to church, talk to somebody. If you're not going to, you have to say, like, luckily for me, my wife is fantastic and she's been through her own traumatic stuff. Yep. So when I say I'm dealing with something, she knows how to respond.
Right. Yeah. Right.
She knows how to listen. That's really the key. You can sit there for 30 minutes and let somebody talk, and then when they're done. Actually, she sent me something today. I'm glad I wanted to bring this up. Simon Sinek. I'm sure you guys know him.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very much so.
He mentioned something. That person needs 8 minutes. 8 minutes of a friend. They weren't even talking spouses. They were just talking of a good friend. You need 8 minutes of talking back and forth, or one person talking, one person listening. 8 minutes to completely change everything in your brain for that specific situation.
Oh, wow.
So if somebody's like, hey, I need 8 minutes of your time.
Yep. If she has that, send us the link so we can put it in the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because right now there's so many people stressed out in this world at this moment.
Because they're trying to take it all on their own.
Yeah, because we got all these wars going on. We got an economy that's not doing great. We have an election, and the election is always bad. Every year. Mm-hmm. But
at least none of us are a candidate that no one beat. Go look at the Nevada primary. So that's kind of funny. Anybody who has followed it, isn't it?
Crazy.
Right? So anyway.
So the bottom line is, true. But the bottom line is we have all that kind of stuff going on. And your message to what I'm hearing is just go get help.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't want to go see a professional therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, like if you don't go to a church, just go walk into a church and find a pastor. Yeah. Pastors, not all pastors are counselors, but they've been trained in counseling, and a pastor will listen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have a heart for people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a pastor.
Absolutely.
Go talk to, like you were talking about, the all the police departments. They have their chaplains. There's crisis hotlines. Like swallow your pride, be humble, and make the phone call if you think something bad is going to happen.
Right, because those first responders, military, they're all used to compartmentalizing and
kind of going. We're told. Like we don't have that stuff for us. We don't have a chaplain. Yeah. I've been in some nasty cases. You know what you do? You go home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's not healthy to go home with that on your brain to your wife and kids. No.
And that's why the counseling. We have a Celebrate Recovery here. I go to it. So, I mean, that's something that I've done, and I need that or I will explode as a pastor, and I know that. And then I go to counseling also. Yeah. So that's something that's vitally important. Listen to what a military guy who's been through a lot, and we'll have him at a different time to come on here. But just to be able to say, I know I need help. I need to get the help.
Yes.
I need people with me.
Take
Correct?
that step. Yeah.
So we're about the end of our time, Matt, but we started off with Matt Dallara. Matt Dallara. Real quick,
Yeah.
what's the story?
Half my family says Dallara, half my family says Dallara, so it just depends on who you talk to. I say Dallara, one of my kids says Dallara, whatever you want.
Cool beans.
That's how
It
the world
works.
goes around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Matt Dallara, David Towner, Sam McKeown. Thank you for listening. Today is my favorite day. Live intentionally, be very, very blessed.
Guys,
We're
take it
out of
easy.
here.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to TIMFD. Today is my favorite day. Views, comments, and opinions are those of the host and guest alone, and Dave and Sam are solely responsible for the content of this podcast. TIMFD is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Music is composed and performed by Chuck Balt. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, live intentionally, and be very blessed.